Hello, it's Jack Gill and welcome to Redmen Academy. We've got a special youth show lined up for you today. I am joined by Matt Addison from The Echo and James McHale as always with Liam Emery behind on the ones and twos. I got all your last names right, so that's good. How you been, gents, anyway?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Not too bad, all right, yeah.
So, Matt's obviously from The Echo, as I've just mentioned. Matt, if you'd like to explain your role at The Echo and what you do there with youth football.
Yeah, of course. So I initially started out at The Echo back in November. So that was initially on a sort of 2-3 month freelance basis. And since then, I've got my new job as the Blood Red writer, which basically involves covering the best team in the world, week in, week out, day in, day out. But yeah, a large part of that is covering youth football. So we have our own academy show on the Blood Red channel. So I go over and obviously cover the 18s, the 23s, speaking to Barry and to Critch and as many of the players as well as possible and sort of keeping on top of that. So yeah, it's a hugely exciting time obviously for myself, for the football club at first team level, but massively so for the youth team as well.
Yeah, of course. And James, I know we spoke a lot about who's caught our eye in particular this season. Curtis Jones, one of them.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about him in more detail because obviously on part 2 we're going to talk about this week and this week's games. Phenomenal once again, an 8-minute hat-trick he scored against Sunderland on Friday. He's getting more and more first team opportunities. He was in the sponsorship video yesterday for I don't know what the company is, Chalco, something like that. But just how good has he been this season?
He's been incredible, hasn't he, really? He's come into the team and he's looked like someone who's sort of already sort of at that level. And when you're the best team in the world to come into that side, it shows his quality. If you had to come into the side a few years ago, you say, okay, maybe he's not quite at this level. The team wasn't sort of where it's at now. But at this moment, we are incredible. And for him to force his way into the first team plans and consistently travel with the first team as well, like sort of on that standby list, it's all about his quality.
And Matt, he came into the game against Wolves in the FA Cup last season in the third round. Was disappointing. Many people sort of wondered what his future would be at Liverpool. Obviously, as a local lad, I know a lot of people involved with Liverpool really want him to go through and to be that man that progresses through the academy in a similar style that Trent Alexander-Arnold did. And this season, his progression, his improvement has just been so good, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's always been one that people have sort of spoken about as he's come through the system, but particularly this year, I think he's just got better and better and better. And one of the big things that they looked at was, responsibility and how much, influence not only can he have on the game through his ability, but through leadership and through different bits. And obviously that's a big part of what Liverpool's academy do. It's not just about how good you are as a footballer, it's about how big you are as a person and that sort of thing. And I think he's come on leaps and bounds this season. He's added goals to his game. He's got the added sort of factor of being able to play in midfield or play on the left of the front three, which, if you're a young player, to have that versatility is quite often a big, well, yeah, exactly, yeah. And it sort of helps with your learning as well. If you play in one position, that's fine, and that's that's perfectly reasonable for any player. You look at Harvey Elliott, he's never going to play anywhere other than on the right side of the front three, and that's fine. But with Curtis, it's a case of being able to be a little bit more versatile. I think that gives you different skill sets and it gives you a better understanding of when you're in a certain position, what somebody else is going to do, and it just helps with that understanding.
It was another brilliant decision from the staff at Liverpool as well, because obviously I know at the start of the season a loan move was talked about for Curtis Jones, and obviously the staff instead decided to give him the armband, give him that responsibility, and give him that leadership in the under-23s, which he seems to have taken hold of, and absolutely he's risen to it, hasn't he? Because he has been superb, and time again he saved the under-23s. He pops up with goals, assists. And he has been the go-to player for the under-23s this season.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to remember that he's still, he's not one of the most experienced. He's not the oldest player in that age group. And yeah, you're absolutely right to point out that he could have easily gone out on loan. Mm-hmm. Probably maybe the end of November, sort of start of December, I was expecting him to be honest, for the second half of the season. Certainly there was a couple of championship clubs looking at him over the January transfer window, and Liverpool obviously have decided actually it's probably better for him to stay and learn from some of the quality players that they've got at the first team level. So I think the fact that there were so many teams interested says a lot about him. But I think what says even more about him is the fact that Liverpool decided to keep hold of him.
Another leader in the team, James, that obviously at the start of the season I expected to be given the armband before obviously Curtis Jones did. I know there were rumours that he wanted out, that he wasn't too comfortable at Liverpool after his loan spell at Doncaster last season. Obviously Herbie Kane, he's ended up at Hull, he's picked up an injury. Where do you see his future?
I mean, at the start of the season, when we talked about and we saw him perform, didn't we, sort of week in, week out, he took on that sort of, I don't know, the sort of talisman figure in the midfield, driving the team forward and connecting sort of the midfield and attack, but also helping in defence too, which I think we have struggled at times to sort of link the team. But then, obviously, this injury is sort of basically the end of the season, hasn't it, really? I don't think he's expected to play again this season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a sort of 3 or 4 month injury. I'm not too sure if he'll come back to Liverpool now and play. He's not going to want to play youth football next season again after his career sort of flatlining this season. I'd expect him to be sold or loaned out permanently, you know, with a view to sort of the Ovia Jaria situation.
Well, what are your thoughts on Herbie Kane, Matt? I know it's not on the agenda, but we've spoken about it time and time again. Liam, obviously behind the camera, he's a Doncaster Rovers fan, and he obviously watched a lot of Herbie Kane last season. I watched a bit of him, to be honest. I went to the games with Liam to watch him, and I thought he was a very, very good player. There's been times this season where he's been very good for the youth side. I remember his late winner, I think it was against Everton, late winner curling strike from the edge of the area in the top corner. Where do you see his future? Do you think I mean, it looks likely that he'll go elsewhere, but in terms of next season, do you think his move will be in the summer, or do you think he'll be with the under-23s next season being that leader if Curtis Jones is to step up to first team duties?
Yeah, I mean, I think with his age, it's probably the right time for him to move on and possibly find a new club, which sounds maybe a bit harsh, but, you know, for him to go and play for a championship side week in, week out, I think would be, you know, a brilliant achievement. And we always sort of talk about the next one to step off from the academy into the first team picture, but the fact is that the majority of these players are not going to play like Trent Alexander-Arnold week in, week out for Liverpool. They've got to go and find careers elsewhere, and I think he's sort of at that age now where, what is he, 21, 22?
Yeah, sort of make or break time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the right time, and to be honest, I think I was surprised he didn't go out on loan last summer. I think the only reason he didn't end up going was because he got injured. He's then obviously gone out in January and got injured again, so he's not the best of luck. But I think, look, I'd be surprised if there wasn't 2 or 3 championship clubs looking at him, whether that's permanent, whether that's another loan deal. I think he's just got to go and play first team regular football now.
I think he's probably likely to join Hull with obviously Grant McCann being there. He knows he's a good player. Probably spend money on him in the summer. It's just how much you'll probably go for. I think his valuation last summer would have been a lot more than this summer, so it's a bit unfortunate for us, really. That going on to some news that we've had over the last couple of days, really, it seems like both Jones and Elliott will end the season with new contracts. Obviously, Harvey Elliott turned 17, so he's able to get his first team contract in the summer, and Curtis Jones is set for improved terms. James, how big is this news, and how much do both deserve it?
Yeah, it's massive, isn't it, really? It sort of ties down our future as a club, really, isn't it? These are seen as the next generation of stars to make through. And when you watch them play, you know, whether it's for the first team or at under 23 level, you can see that they are the real deal. And you can see how the club have so much faith in them as well. I think Harvey Elliott at times has looked a little bit lost, or his overall game hasn't quite been at the highest level, but he has that individual brilliance. And for a 16-year-old to be doing that at under 23 and at first team level, so it's almost unheard of, isn't it? So I think people put too much expectation when he's surrounded by players that are, you know, 3 or 4 years older than him, even at youth level. He's a very, very good player.
Yeah, I mean, James has picked out that Matt, but obviously the 16-year-old Harvey Elliott, he's had more than he could have dreamed of this season, really. The chances he's had with the first team has been unbelievable. Obviously, we know he's a boyhood Liverpool fan, and I remember being at the Aston Villa game in the Cup where 5-0 scoreline, I mean, it looks bad, but Harvey Elliott ran that game, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you do watch him and forget how young he is, and I think that says a huge amount. The fact that he's got this 3-year contract, obviously Liverpool would have liked it to have been longer, but the FIFA regulations dictate that it can only be be 3 years. So
he'll be in no rush to go though anyway, will he?
No, I mean he's in the right place for his development. I think he's almost too young even to go out on loan.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of
such a weird age for him, isn't it?
Yeah,
you're not sure what he can do or what he can't do.
Yeah, but at the same time, he doesn't look out of place when he's training with the first team, when he's come into the side, as you say, for Aston Villa and for Shrewsbury as well. And yeah, I mean it's massively exciting, and the fact that he's a Liverpool fan is a bit of a bonus. That's obviously not the reason that he's in the team. He's in the team because he's a fantastic footballer, but from a fan's perspective, of course, that's no bad thing either.
That's the thing. A question for both of you now. Obviously, you've just mentioned his age there, Matt, and how it's a very difficult age, because obviously there's not many 16-year-olds that sort of break through and look as good as Harvey Elliott. One player that has had a similar struggle is like Phil Foden, where he's come into the team early, a very, very good team, and obviously he's getting minimal chances with the first team. Do you think that it may be an issue for Liverpool in the future that Harvey Elliott obviously feels that he's better than youth level and he wants a move to be playing first team football somewhere?
I mean, I think he's at that level, and when he's performing at that level now, where he can probably force his way into matchday squads within the next year or so on a more consistent basis too, and he can be the guy that we look to if we need to sort of rotate that right hand side or need to freshen up the team a little bit. I don't see anything to make me believe otherwise. We seem to have put a lot of faith in him, and this contract, which I imagine he'll sign another one the moment he turns 18 on much longer terms too. I can't see him sort of be knocking at the door for much longer.
No, I think it's going to be really interesting over the next couple of years to see what Liverpool's plans are for him, because I think he's already too good for under-23s football. Whether that means they'll wait a year or so and sort of have him in and around the team as he's been this year, I think to replicate what he's done this season for next season would be absolutely fine. After that, you'd probably think maybe he's just about old enough to go out on loan, say to the Championship or even to a lesser Premier League side potentially, or possibly abroad as well. Although
Bundesliga.
Certainly, I'm sure Bundesliga clubs are looking at him already. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they manage him and sort of when he makes that step up. But for me, there's no doubt that he's perfectly on the right path, and injury permitting, of course, I think he's going to be a future star.
I completely agree. I think obviously there's been times this season where many people have thought that he should come in and play more games and get more action, which is just unbelievable when you put his age into it. I think that obviously he will have another season at us and then probably go out on loan. I think I'd favour him going out on loan abroad, in obviously one of the top European leagues, maybe with European experience under his belt as well. Obviously playing in Europe, maybe whether it's the Europa League, Champions League, who knows, but I think that will suit him well. Back to Curtis Jones, obviously improved terms for him. First team football next season, Matt, or a loan move?
Again, it's going to be really interesting. I think my preference would be for him to stay. I think he's at that level now where it would be a shame to see him go out and play football for somebody else, because you'd always be watching whoever he went to and thinking, if only he was doing that for Liverpool kind of thing. So look, there's going to be a couple of changes. We believe Adam Lallana's going to be on the way out. Potentially Curtis Jones could take his role in the squad. And
I mean, that's what I've gathered, because obviously you see like James Pearce say that at the end of the season we're looking for obviously a player that's versatile around the front three, and you're looking for a left back obviously to Andy Robertson. No mention of when Lallana goes, who's going to take over his reins. And obviously we've had a lot of midfield issues over the last couple of years where we've had a lot of injuries all at one time, and actually does that mean that Curtis Jones is going to get more chances?
I think so. And I mean, you look at the age of some of Liverpool's midfielders over the next couple of years, there is going to have to be a bit of a refresh, and the timing just might be perfect. I mean, you'd think if Jordan Henderson's going to be 30 soon, Gini Wijnaldum as well is 30 this year, I think. So obviously not career ending by any stretch of the imagination, but you'd imagine that over the next couple of seasons there's going to be a bit of regeneration in that area, and Curtis is perfectly primed to take over.
He's sort of coming at the right time, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Sorry.
We have we have many midfielders that are pushing through as well at the minute. Obviously we've been giving lots of praise all season to Jake Kane
Yeah.
and Leighton Clarkson, who have been incredible for the under-18s. We've just seen them step up to the under-23s and obviously get their big chance against Shrewsbury. You've also got the likes of like Elijah Dixon-Bonner, we mentioned Herbie Kane before, players like that who are very, very good and may also push for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be harder for them, I think, to make that step up because they are, I'd say more conventional midfielders, but then at the same time they haven't had that exposure that Curtis Jones has had, where he's travelling almost on a weekly basis and training, nearly every day with the first team. But if they can continue to keep forcing their way in for the cup games, then I don't see why they can't. If ability, wise, they should be able to push in.
They've got more time as well, because as Matt said before, Curtis Jones has been a name that's been around for a few years before he's getting this opportunity, and you don't assume that obviously when Wijnaldum, Henderson and Milner and all that all go, you don't expect Klopp to suddenly go, oh actually we're not going to sign anyone, Jake Kane, Clarkson, you come through. But they've got a few years to cement themselves, but I think it's been good for them that they've just stepped up to the under-23s and then they get that FA Cup chance against Shrewsbury. I thought that was brilliant of Jurgen Klopp to do that, and I know he got criticised for that, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. But yeah, I thought it was an excellent opportunity for both of them. Sepp van den Berg, I just want to mention him. Obviously he's improved in the last couple of weeks. Start of the season, me and James were quite critical of him.
A little bit.
Just a tiny bit. But now it seems as when I said before the Shrewsbury game, prove me wrong, and I begged him to prove me wrong, and if he was to start improving his performances, he's been doing exactly that, hasn't he?
He's it's not more that he's played that much better, but he's cut out the little mistakes in his game which were holding him back, because overall his game wasn't too bad, and he was doing a lot of right things, but then he was looking indecisive at important points, and he was sort of letting balls go over his head, and just tiny little things, but they make a massive difference over 90 minutes, don't they? So I think I don't know what he's changed, or whether he's sort of just had a bit of a confidence from a string of sort of good performances, but he looks like a different player now, and I think he's going to be vital in the form of a whole defence really for the end of this season.
What are your thoughts, Matt, on Sepp van den Berg this season? Obviously he's a player that we paid for in the summer. I think a lot of people thought he'd be in and around the first team more than he has been. As a whole, it was quite disappointing, wasn't it? But it's good to see that he's turned himself around and he's playing decent football now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's obviously come in with a huge reputation, and I think Liverpool beat Bayern Munich to his signature, and one or two big clubs around Europe as well. So, look, Liverpool don't sign players by accident. There's obviously a reason why he's come into the club, and I think early doors there was a little bit of concern about his physicality and his sort of positioning, but look, over the last sort of month or so, I think he's come on confidence-wise, and as you said before, like his early on in the season there was mistakes, there was things going over his head, and whenever the ball was in the air, you never really fancied him to win anything.
And he should be the first person to win it as well, the size of him.
Yeah, given his height, but I thought against Shrewsbury he really surprised me actually. I thought he was unbelievable, didn't put a foot wrong all game, and when you compare that, I think, to the Arsenal game he started, didn't he, the 5-5, if you compare those two performances, they were just completely different.
We were saying in the build-up to the game, I did a lot of stuff building up to that, and I was sort of saying that I wanted to see Boyers and Hueva playing that game, because I wanted Van den Berg to have that kick up the arse and sort of know that he needs to step up and improve his performances, because ahead of this season, this would be, before we'd watched Van den Berg in a Liverpool shirt, you'd be like, this is a definite for him to be playing these sorts of games. But I think, as you said, he really surprised me that game, and we both praised him a lot after that performance, and since then, watching him week in, week out, as you say, he has been a lot more confident. So it has been good to see, and I hope he continues with that. Obviously, there's several things it may be. It may have been that he was struggling with homesickness, he was just adjusting to English football, or like James said, with a lack of confidence maybe, as he kept creating issues for himself, that now he's sort of got rid of those, he's enjoying his football more, and he's playing a lot better.
I think we forget sometimes, like even at first team level, you see players come in and they take a few months to adjust. Fabinho, for example, look at him now, he's the best number 6 in the world.
Kite is still adjusting as well.
Kite is still adjusting to a new language, to a new scenario. So for a 17-year-old kid to be coming in and doing that, I think sometimes we almost expect too much too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the case, and all season we've said that, James, haven't we? That actually, as difficult as it has been to praise him at times, with him giving away silly penalties. I can't remember the exact game it was in, but he gave 2 away in one game earlier on in the season, which was a bizarre game.
It was a really odd performance.
But as Matt said then, it's expected at this level, and it's good to see actually that he is improving now.
Yeah, because I really want to see him succeed as well. I think because he's had such a difficult start after arriving, as a first teamer first of all, and arriving for I think 3.5 million, the pressure was always going to be on him, and I think no matter what he would have done, he wouldn't have been able to sort of deflect that, because he was never going to go straight into the first team, straight away as like our 5th choice, 4th choice centre back, because that's just not the way we do things really, is it? You need to bed them in, you need to get these young players acclimatised. I know if I moved abroad now at 20, I'd be terrified, so imagine doing it at 17 to a country where, the football's completely different, the level's a lot higher. I think considering he's not had an awful start, it's just we sort of as fans maybe put a bit too much expectations on him.
Absolutely. A player that I think personally will be on the way out in the summer. It's interesting to hear what you think, Matt. Harry Wilson. I mean, we've spoke about him a lot this season as well. More at the start of the season, where obviously there was that question of, will he stay in and around Jurgen Klopp's squad? Will he go out on loan? Will it be a Premier League team? Will it be abroad? What would happen with Harry Wilson? Obviously, everyone was so excited to see when he went to Bournemouth. What would he do there? He's had an up and down season. Obviously, it's been difficult for Bournemouth. They've had a lot of injuries. He scored goals here and there. I believe he's Bournemouth's top goal scorer.
I think so. I think he's got 7 or 8 in the Premier League, something like that. Which
7
is not
or
bad.
8. My impression of Harry Wilson is I think he's a good player. He scores goals that are good for teams like Bournemouth, where it'll be from a dead ball situation where there's nothing. Maybe Bournemouth are looking for a draw, and then he just pops up with a free kick. It's like, wow. But I think he's not good enough for Liverpool, as in the first team. What's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, going into the season, he was one that I wanted to see stay in and around, and I wasn't massively convinced that going out on loan was the right thing for him. Since then, of course, Harvey Elliott has emerged, and I think potentially that's probably the thing that's changed it for him. I think if Bournemouth, as they may well do, come with 25 million during the summer, something like that, I think Liverpool would struggle to turn that down.
For me, I think with the whole Harry Wilson situation, I think he's a very good player, and actually in the Liverpool squad he gives us a different dynamic. So we could bring him on and look for a goal from a set piece quite easily. A 25-yarder free kick, he seems to find easy, doesn't he, Harry Wilson? But
he's definitely got a lot of quality.
Yeah.
But when you think over the last couple of weeks, Adam Lallana's missed out on a place on the bench. Takumi Minamino hasn't been on the bench. Is Harry Wilson going to get onto the bench ahead of either of those two players?
It's like you say as well. Harvey Elliott has been a lot more exciting than Harry Wilson has been. So it is one of them situations where if you have to pick between the two, I think every Liverpool fan would say Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, and not just because it's a new thing, and there's, I think 6 years between them. But yeah, I think Harry Wilson's big chance was last summer, and potentially, it pains me to say it because I am a big fan of him and I wish him luck for the rest of his career. But I think possibly, a Bournemouth or maybe someone like Leicester. Brendan Rodgers is a big fan of him, I believe, and somewhere like that, I think he will get more out of his career in terms of game time.
The main thing that's swaying my head as well, both of you, is obviously the transfer fee that's being touted. So the 25-30 million. I think if it was like a sort of 10 million thing, I'd be a bit less like, go. I think it's more the fact that he's getting the respect he deserves, with a lot of clubs wanting him for that much money, that makes me more swayed to be willing to sell him, because I think he deserves the respect he deserves, first team football at a Premier League club. I just think where Liverpool are at the minute, James, that perhaps Harry Wilson deserves to be elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the money involved, I think I saw somewhere that it costs, is it 5 or 6 million to keep the academy running year on year-ish. So that's going to keep the players coming through for the next 6 years, just, that transfer fee alone, which, for the development of, all these players coming through, like Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, it's going to sort of give them the opportunity to do what maybe he couldn't do with the first team. But then at the same time, does he offer anything different to the likes of, your Shaqiris, who are good at getting balls into the box or good on set pieces, but their overall game isn't really at our level? If he's struggling to get in the first team when he's fit, then I think it'd be even harder for Harry Wilson.
You've seen with his attitude as well, haven't you? Like at Bournemouth, he loves playing for that first team. When he gets subbed off, he's not happy with himself at all. And I think that for that reason as well, that at this point in time he wants to be playing first team football there, and he's enjoying playing it week in week out. So actually I think he'll prefer going on a permanent move to a Premier League team where he's playing football week in week out. And I know that I trust Liverpool to put in a buyback clause where if he reaches a certain level where he can come in and get regular football for us, that we'll buy him back for a certain amount of money, and he'll be a Liverpool player again. Rhian Brewster as well, another player out on loan. He's obviously gone in January to Swansea. He started well. He got a few goals, didn't he, Matt? What is your view on him after this season? Where do you think he will go? Do you think another loan move will be beneficial from him? My stance is that perhaps this loan move's come a bit too late for him. I think he needs a whole season in a certain place to get more comfortable there. Obviously he's still in and out of fitness from his injury. We've seen him this season not recover fully, because when he has been getting regular spells of football, he's then picked up another injury and been out for a short period of time. Where do you stand on the whole Brewster situation?
Yeah, I think he's a massive talent. I think he's showing that already at Swansea. I think he maybe scored on his debut, did he? Or possibly the game after. But I think maybe another loan, as you say, for a full season. Maybe a bit like what Wilson's done this season. Maybe go to a Bournemouth or Crystal Palace or somewhere like that. Sort of lower half of the Premier League, playing pretty much every Premier League game, and then reassess it, because he is a very good player, but he's not going to replace Roberto Firmino in Liverpool's team anytime soon. So I think for him to go and take the next step in his career, possibly he's a little bit too good for the Championship, but we only really know that once he goes out to the Premier League. So
we only know we know as well. That obviously German clubs were interested in him a couple of seasons ago. So it might be that he finds a move abroad. James, obviously as well, I think with the form currently of Joe Hardy, he's impressing. Glatzel is coming back from
even
injury.
Liam Miller's been good as well though, since he's come back.
Exactly. I think Liam Miller's might be likely to move at the end of the season though, but as you say, he's been on good form. I think you've got as well that you've got them two. You've got the fact that Leighton Stewart is possibly getting a bit too good for under 18s football now. Obviously, which is amazing, seeing as it's his first season at that level. But I think that may mean that we're in a position where Rhian Brewster is able to have a full season next season out on loan.
I mean, we've played better, as much as it pains to say it, under 23 level without him. And I think that's probably down to his role and the fact that we brought in a number 9.
I think that's more as well due to the fact that with Rhian Brewster, obviously he was 1 week in the under 23s, 1 week in the travelling squad for the first team. It was very difficult for him to find that rhythm. He's just come back from injury as well. I don't think it's in terms of ability and player for player. I think it's more that.
I think having a number 9 who is a proper number 9 consistently with the youth team too, it's shown us how good this team can be, as opposed to having this prodigy who's wanted by the first team but then still needed at youth level on a comeback to fitness. It doesn't really help anyone in that situation. What he needs is consistent minutes, and I think a low next season, maybe a top Championship side or as Matt said, a lower Premier League team, it would give him that sort of development that he's missed out on over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years now, isn't it?
Do you think too much pressure was put on him at the start of the season, Matt? Do you think that has sort of impacted on him this season? Do you think the pressure of, obviously, he got a lot of stick for wearing that Champions League medal around his neck at the Barbers, and obviously he was compared a lot to Mason Greenwood stupidly at the start of the season. Do you think he's been affected by that?
Possibly. I think from what I know of him, he's a very confident player. Certainly the Champions League thing would suggest that. I think I wouldn't necessarily say it's affected him. I just think naturally his chances at first team level have been restricted. He's obviously been coming back from a huge injury, which doesn't help. I
thought he was going to get more first team chances than he did. I think we all did, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when you go into a season, you're always sort of looking at the squad depth and going, oh well, he's going to get so many games, and it doesn't always pan out in exactly that way, because you can never predict injuries, you can never predict sort of how far Liverpool are going to go in certain competitions. I don't think any of us could have predicted what happened with the Carabao Cup being a day before the Club World Cup and things like that. So it's been a slightly strange season for him, but as I said, if he can go out on loan for a full season, stay fit for a full season next season, I think he'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, I completely agree. You just briefly mentioned there, obviously, the Carabao Cup. We spoke about it a few times. We spoke about the Shrewsbury game in the FA Cup. The chances this season for the youth players have been spectacular, really. I don't think there's another club, especially not in English football, that has been given opportunities like us. Jurgen Klopp has been criticised for it a lot this season, more so with the Shrewsbury game. Obviously, with the Aston Villa game, we couldn't really help it, but he's still got some criticism for that. Matt, I just want your obviously opinion on just how good this season has been for youth football at Liverpool, especially after the whole Bobby Duncan situation in the summer, where obviously his agent Saif Ruby came out and criticised the club and how we handle youth players massively.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a season it's been for youth, first of all. I mean, at the moment there's a group of young players coming through at Liverpool, which probably not in my lifetime have we had so many coming through at one time. The fact that Klopp got criticised for fielding a team which then went and beat Shrewsbury, perhaps against the odds, is even better, because it just sort of goes to show really that wasn't him. Well, it was kind of him taking a stand against the replays and that whole situation, but it was also a show of faith in the work that Alex Inglethorpe, Neil Critchley, Barry Lutis and all of the players themselves have done. So I just think this season has been brilliant for all of these players' development, and as I mentioned before, not all of them will go on and play consistently for Liverpool, but the fact that they can always say, well, I played at Anfield, we won. It was a youth team game essentially, but it was a first team game officially, and wherever they go next, I think even for some of those lads who are going to go out on loan next season, some of the teams maybe would have been looking, League One or Championship teams would have been looking at them and thinking, well, we're not sure. That Shrewsbury game might have been the one that sold it to them, when actually they are ready, and we'll go back and we'll try and get them in the summer. So it sort of put them in the shop window, as much as none of them would have wanted that, in the sense that they all did their plan, and what they've always wanted is to play for Liverpool long term. But look, there's been no negativity around the youth team. There's been no sort of idea of none of these players are good enough, or these players are not going to have a career. I think the vast majority of these players are going to go on and be professionals, and up and down the country, how many academy sides can say that? Not very many.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, isn't it, James? We spoke about it a few times, but there's the whole idea of the magic of the FA Cup, and I know teams in League One, League Two like to say that a lot when they have a giant killing, but isn't the magic of the FA Cup as well, seeing these youth players come in and do a job like that against an opposition in League One? Yeah,
I mean, it's the same sort of thing, isn't it, where the underdog massively overachieves, and I don't think many people expected too much because of our youngsters, really. I mean, maybe because of the Aston Villa game might have sort of reminded people how young these kids are, and not to put so much sort of pressure on them. But then they bounced back, obviously, against Shrewsbury, and I'm like so happy with how they've played as well, because it's been hard for them. They mightn't have personally felt ready for first team football, but they've been thrown in and they've performed admirably.
Absolutely. I think the chances they've got this season have been obviously outstanding, and the question I'm going to pose now is against Chelsea. Do you think they'll go for a young team as well? Obviously they got the Youth League game against Benfica on the same night, which is awful planning. I don't understand why these governing bodies of football don't talk to each other, which it infuriates me actually, Matt, because obviously the whole idea for young players, and when they get an opportunity with the first team, is they're meant to have more opportunities. They're meant to be playing these games in Europe for the youth sides, and then trying to get in the first team as well. So when it puts them both on the same night, it's just bad planning, isn't it?
It is, and it's not the first time we've sort of come across this season. We've spoken about this many times, and for Liverpool it will be a little bit of a frustration. I think on this occasion, actually, I think Jurgen Klopp will go strong-ish against Chelsea. So I think I think maybe Nico Williams will play. I think maybe Harvey Elliott will play. Other than that, maybe Curtis Jones as well. But I think a couple of the players who potentially are sort of halfway between academy and first team, I think they'll probably just go with the youth league game, and I think it might be a slightly stronger side against Chelsea than what a few people are expecting, just because look, the Premier League is pretty much done. Not quite, but it is. Liverpool are going to win the league. The Champions League obviously is another big opportunity which is coming up, and Liverpool have got a job to do in that. But look, if you can go and beat Chelsea, because Chelsea are going to go strong.
Yeah.
The FA Cup now is a huge part of their season. Liverpool are going to have to go strong to go through, and I think they probably will do, just because it's another chance. How many rounds away from Wembley are we? Are we 2 rounds? If beat Chelsea, then there's one more, and then semi-finals at Wembley. So it's a huge opportunity.
We're going to do obviously more of a preview for the Chelsea game, James, in part 2. So make sure you head over to the website after this, obviously, and we'll give you all the pre-match content for Chelsea. I'm really looking forward to that. Dixon-Bonner obviously picked up an injury last week. It's a bad injury, really. It's an ACL injury for his knee. James, it's very disappointing for him.
Yeah, it's gutting because he was sort of seen as one of the sort of bright sparks in midfield, wasn't he? The way he sort of led the under-18s to the cup final, obviously that we won. Year. And then this season he's stepped up and sort of come into the side and not really looked out of his depth. He's been sort of that dynamic box to box. He's sort of the last 3 months he's had a goal to his game too, hasn't he? Which is something that he said that he was lacking.
Yeah.
But so I think the whole team will be gutted to lose him, because he does seem like a big figure in the dressing room, doesn't he? From the way all the lads sort of speak about him and the way the coaches seem very fond of him. He seems like sort of the model professional.
Yeah, he's had the armband at times this season as well, Matt, and we spoke last week, me and James, about the fact that obviously Dixon-Bonner may have been a bit disappointed by the fact that he didn't get to start against Shrewsbury and against Aston Villa. I think he knows there's parts of his game that he needs to improve. I know Critchley's come out this season and said that at times, but against Wolves he came out, he got a brace, he played very, very well. As James said, added goals to his game. But since then he's gone slightly quiet again, and obviously this injury is another setback for him.
Yeah, I think injuries for a few of these players are coming at the wrong time. I think this was a big period for him, as you say, to find a little bit of consistency, which sometimes with young players you don't necessarily get. And yeah, I think he's going to be out for the rest of this season. It's a case of then resetting again in the summer and going again. But I think he's one of those where he seems to have been around for a long time, but he is still very young. So he's got time on his side, and we will keep obviously a close eye on him over the next couple of seasons. But yeah, pre-season is going to be big for him again.
Yeah, I think it's more difficult for him as well, as you said, with the timing, with the fact that Kane and Clarkson are pushing through. They got rewarded for it, and it almost seemed critical of him that he didn't get on. Obviously he got on the pitch late on, but he didn't get a start in that game. I think I put myself in that situation. I think if I was Dixon-Bonner in that situation, I would have been annoyed at not getting a start that game. Obviously Critchley probably gave him a lot of reasons as to why. It may have been just, as I said earlier, with other situations, it may have been that kick up the arse to say work harder and you'll get a start in games like this. But obviously with this knee injury now, it makes it even more difficult for him. And obviously with ACL injuries as well, ligament injuries, especially to the knee, there's no set time on it either, which means he may miss part of next season as well with it. So it could be difficult for Dixon-Bonner in the future. A bit of non-LFC news now, trying to get something out of you, Matt, in terms of Saka from Arsenal. Now, he's a player that in the last few months especially has really impressed me. I like the fact that he's diverse. He can play left back, sort of, as well as I say, he can play left back in the style that we play with our fullbacks. He can also be an understudy to Mane on that left wing. How much would you like to see him in a Liverpool shirt in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a massively exciting player. I think he's played as a winger for his entire life. I think the only reason he's playing for Arsenal now is because of injuries at left back. So yeah, he's benefited from injuries where one or two young players that we've spoken about have sort of felt the opposite side of that. And yeah, I think he's got about 10-12 assists this season for Arsenal, which from left back is ridiculous for an 18-year-old. Yeah, certainly there's been a lot of talk about Liverpool being interested. I'm sure they'll be aware of him, whether they go in and sort of have a look at him. I think he's got about 18 months left on his contract, and he seems to be stalling on signing a new one. So, yeah, I think there's the potential there for Liverpool to get that deal done if they choose to. And of course, as you mentioned, one of the slots that Liverpool are looking at is left back. Whether there's somebody coming through who Liverpool think is ready, whether Adam Lewis has made the progression to sort of step up into that role next season, I'm not too sure. Obviously, he's had injury troubles himself. So, look, if Liverpool are looking to buy a left back, he's got to be fairly high up on the list, you'd imagine, just because of those numbers. But yeah, certainly, he's a player that I like, and even watching him, was it Everton they played last weekend? The cross that he put in for Eddie Nketiah's goal, I think was, it sort of was a glimpse into the talent that he's got. So massively exciting, but time will tell whether Liverpool go back for him.
James, your thoughts on this?
I mean, we said sort of, I think 2 weeks ago that he's a very good player and we're both very keen on him, and I think we haven't really seen the progression from our current young left backs really. Yasser Larouci has done well at times, but his game seems to be lacking in certain areas, and then obviously Adam Lewis too, he's recently come back from injury, which is probably a good, perfect time for him, with injuries in midfield at under 23 level. But I mean, Saka's a different level, isn't he? I think personally, and I don't want to put these other lads down. And Tony Gallagher's really impressed me too this season. But
he's good against Villa, wasn't he?
Exactly, yeah. But Saka just seems like different gravy. He's got that versatility where he's gone into defence and he's performed, but we know that he's also a very good forward too. And you always seem to lose a part of your game when you move into defence from attack, or vice versa. But he seems to sort of just be just as good, and he's getting numbers which you wouldn't really expect at all from him.
That's the thing for me. He seems to have the style of Yasser Larouci going forwards, and then the defensive style of Adam Lewis when defending as well. I really like him. He's a player that really intrigues me. I think that obviously he's got that perfect balance of attacking and defensive ability as well, which I think Adam Lewis and Yasser Larouci haven't quite got yet. And there's also that thing as well of our style of play and how he would fit into that as a left back really. And I think he'd be a good player for us, but I know Arteta is keen on him to sign that new contract. I know there's been some quotes last week that he's a player that he wants to build a team around at Arsenal. So it's probably very unlikely that we'll get him, but a boy can dream.
Yeah, certainly. I think it'll be on the agenda again before the end of the season. I mean, I wrote the story last week that Mikel Arteta had basically said, look, it's not up to me, it's up to the club. So he's very keen on it, but so far there's been no progress. So look, as it stands, I think there's a good chance that he will move somewhere. Whether that's to Liverpool, I don't know.
I hope so, I really do. Let's go on to obviously some a nice story to end it with. Obviously Paul Glatzel back from his injury, and I was really impressed this week. Last week, Jurgen Klopp was doing his press conference, Matt, and he mentioned Glatzel's name. He actually said about obviously going back to training apart from Glatzel, which I thought was brilliant, because it shows that obviously a lad that was in the under-18s last season got to play pre-season, played really well in pre-season in the UK, I thought, picked up the injury, so he couldn't go to the US. Bobby Duncan obviously went instead of him, and I think that the fact that he's obviously come back from this long layoff straight to train with the first team again is just brilliant news for him.
Yeah, so I'd be expecting him to play some minutes before the end of the season, which is, it's going to be a huge thing for him. He's had so many injury troubles over the last couple of years. He I think broke his leg when he was about 16, came back, scored 28 goals, fired Liverpool to the FA Youth Cup, and then obviously got the injury. So he's been so unfortunate, and he's such a hard-working kid.
He looks a player as well, doesn't he?
He's such a nice lad, but he's such a good footballer as well. And I think, again, pre-season is going to be a massive opportunity for him, because, as you say, he's gone straight back to Melwood. Jurgen Klopp talks about him as being a first-team player. As you say, you mentioned Shaqiri, Milner and Glatzel. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, even something as small as that for an 18-year-old, 19-year-old who has been out injured, it must be a massive confidence boost for him, just to hear his name being talked about. And I've seen quotes recently, I think he spoke to the club's website about how Oxlade-Chamberlain's been helping him, and sort of how he's done his entire recovery at Melwood with the first team staff. So,
which is brilliant news, obviously, because obviously with Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain going through the same injury, obviously we know Milner's done well with the first team as well, with the youth team as well, against Shrewsbury, where he's sat behind the dugout and sort of been that leader from the first team. And I do think that obviously the youth side will absolutely benefit from that, and it's a good experience for them to have a close working relationship with these big stars at Liverpool.
Yeah, massively, and just over the next couple of years, you'd imagine that that's going to get even stronger with obviously the first team moving across to Kirkby. So, well, it's exciting times, and hopefully Powell can stay injury free for pre-season heading into next season. And look, you think of the games that he would have played in this season, he must be absolutely champing at the bit to get on and play, because he would have played against Arsenal, he would have played against Villa, he would have played against Shrewsbury, and it's frustrating that he got the injury, but at the same time we know how much of a good player there is there.
I think where this club is at though at the minute, James, it shows that when we've got players like Paul Glatzel, who obviously next season is going to be in the under-23s, players like that who are so good, and we have a lot of them as well. Obviously we spoke about our attacking options there, where next season, if Brewster doesn't go back out on loan, we may have Joe Hardy, Brewster, Leighton Stewart and Paul Glatzel all in one side all fighting for the under-23s. I think it just shows where this club is at the minute, top to bottom. It is just perfect, isn't it?
I mean, under-19 level in the Youth League, under-23 in the Champions Cup, we're going to be absolutely stacked up front, and I think that's going to allow us to compete at multiple fronts on youth level too. We're going to be going for every trophy possible. We are at the moment, but we're going to be fully stocked to go for everything, aren't we? And then these players too are then going to be playing for the first team in the League Cup, hopefully in the FA Cup if we do progress. I think that the way we're sort of looking to go forward to, where we will be sort of supplementing the first team with these young stars and giving breaks whenever possible, because our aim is to go as far as possible in every competition, isn't it? It's only going to benefit them, and they're going to be getting more minutes than probably any other youth prospects in the country.
Absolutely. Now that's the end of part 1. Part 2 is going to be available on the redmentv.com, so make sure you go over there, subscribe. The first month is free, so if you just want to watch this video with Matt, you can just go over there, subscribe, get a month free, watch this video and see if you like it at the end of the month. Obviously we provide content week in, week out for you, and as Matt and James have both said today, it is a very exciting time for Liverpool Football Club, especially at youth level. I say that kind of not really, being as the first team are about to win the league, but youth level is exactly the same as the first team, both doing very well at the minute, and obviously it's always good to see the most exciting youth talents at this football club. So thank you very much for watching, and head over to the redmentv.com. Cheers.